All right, welcome back to the One Bar and Lupagus show. I am Lupagus, and we're going to dive into the NFL draft a little bit today. Only 3 games left in the regular season for the Minnesota Vikings. Playoff chances are still alive by a thread, but the NFL draft is just over the horizon. This is really late December. I was saying late December, mid-December, kind of when draft season just is kind of in its infancy, maybe not even birthed out yet, still in that third trimester stage, but the NFL draft is close, is what I'm saying, and we are going to talk a little bit about it, what pick the Vikings hold right now, where they may end up, and just some prospects and positions they may be looking at with that pick. I ran some simulators, and some very interesting names were on the board that I would love to talk about. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings hold the 14th overall pick, sitting at 6-7. If they make the playoffs, they could. I mean, if they make it, they're going to make it at like 8-8, 7-9. If they squeeze in somehow, I don't see this team getting to 9-7. So they probably the worst they could pick would be 20th, unless for some crazy ass reason they win a couple playoff games. But let's just say they pick in that 20 to 14 range. Realistically, with Chicago behind them, New England, I think the Vikings will end up picking in the 14 to 16 range. 14 being highest, 16 probably most likely being the lowest, unless something unforeseen happens, like the Raiders just start tanking. But that's probably where they're going to end up. So obviously, next thing to look at is the positions the Vikings will be focusing on. The major needs on this team, they got to find a pass rusher to go with Danielle Hunter. I know Hunter coming back is going to help, but Adenabo didn't really step up in that starter role this year. The pass rush has been absolutely pathetic. It's been anemic. It just hasn't been there. They got to find another edge rusher. So if they got a beautiful edge rusher sitting there, that would be amazing. Offensive tackle, Riley Reeve, who knows if his future will be with Minnesota next year. He's had a great season, but again, with his contract and his age, he may be somebody they cut bait with. Guard, God, this team needs a guard. I don't know Ezra Cleveland's future. Is it going to be at guard? Is it going to be at left tackle? He may be one of the solutions, but they got to find somebody on the other side. Dakota Dozier's just been pathetic. Drew Samia was pathetic. Just a lot of poor performances on the Vikings at the guard position. Safety, they needed a safety. Anthony Harris probably won't be back next year. Hasn't quite had the season as far as making big plays as he did last year. He's got plenty of tackles, but no, I don't think he's got any interceptions yet this year, and just not really knocking down the passes the way he has in the past. Defensive tackle, the Vikings got to find the guy who can penetrate. They get Michael Pierce back, so there's your run stuffer for next year. But they just need to find that 3-tech, the guy who can create the interior pressure, collapse pockets, put pressure on the quarterback from the middle. They haven't had that since Sheldon Richardson. And, man, it'd be just Mike Zimmer's whole defense just kind of revolves around having that piece. And without it this year, it's definitely, I think Zimmer's been a little bit handicapped for what he can do. And then you got to look at some secondary positions. If there's a stud quarterback there, the Vikings got to pull the trigger. You got to have that young guy on the roster that you're ready to groom. Kirk Cousins is, I think, it's only around for another year or two. So you got to have that backup quarterback. And then a wide receiver. I know you got Justin Jefferson, but Adam Thielen's over 30. If there's a stud there, if he's the best player, would not shock me one bit if the Vikings pulled the trigger on a wide receiver. So, again, like I said at the start, I ran a couple simulations. These are some of the names that were available, so I just want to go through those. Defensive tackle Jay Tufay was there from USC. He'd be an amazing fit. He's a guy I do think is going to rise as this process goes on. Quick off the ball. He is the ideal 3 technique for the Vikings. He would be amazing there in the middle. Right now you see him ranked kind of in the early 20s, so maybe a little bit early at 14, but man, again, if he rises, I think he'd be a great fit for Mike Zimmer's defense. Offensive tackles. Now, this is kind of a wide range right now where these players are ranked. You got Sam Cosmi from Texas, Christian Darrisaw, a couple names to think about there. Again, some have them high, some have them lower. So, where they ultimately end up will kind of shake out in the next couple months, but definitely a couple options the Vikings should consider there. At guard, Wyatt Davis. I've seen him ranked as high as 14. I've seen him down in the 20s. So, it depends on the Vikings grade out this guy, but he's an instant starter. You put him in. maybe left guard right next to Garrett Bradbury, and immediately should upgrade your offensive line. Just a steady presence, run blocker, pass blocker. He's one of these can't miss interior players who may not be sexy, but you put him in there and he's a 10-year starter for you. Crete Humphreys, another guy, center guard, make a lot of sense for the Vikings. I read one simulation, Greg Russo was there. This guy's usually a top 10 talent. If he falls to 14, the Vikings do end up with that 14th pick. You got to jump all over this guy. Have him next to Daniel Hunter. How much would that help the young secondary out next year? Help those young corners who are getting better. But, man, you get an elite pass rush up front. Those guys, it's only going to help them on the back end. So having Greg Russo next to Daniel Hunter would just be a Vikings wet and purple dream. And then you got to look at if the wide receivers, if Devonta Smith falls or Rashad Bateman are there, it'd be awfully hard for the Vikings to pass. They would be, the best player available, unless something crazy like Russo's there. But, man, get those guys, for a couple of years, you'll have Thielen, Jefferson, and Bateman. God, that would just be amazing. The fact that Bateman played for the Gophers would make that even better. So I'm not going to make a pick right now. I just want to kind of talk about some options, some positions. Again, start running those simulators. They're fun as hell. Kill a lot of time at work if you got nothing going on. Just interesting to see where players are ranked right now and where they're going to change between now and the draft. But again, where I'm thinking the Vikings, I think they'd love to get a big old D tackle who can penetrate, love to improve that offensive line. And again, if a receiver falls, that definitely cannot be ruled out for the Vikings. So, all right, that is the little NFL draft talk for the day, for the week. Enjoy. Big game coming up against Chicago. If the Vikings want to get back in the thick of the playoff hunt, they got to sweep the Bears this year. Troops coming to town. See what they can do. All right, until then, guys, always remember to keep your skull in your hole.